Hey everyone, welcome back to Night Time. We're going to be reading Cantos 9 through 12 from Dante's Inferno. So get relaxed, unwind, and just listen. Canto 9, The Gate of D, Dante's Fear, the Three Furies invoking Medusa, Virgil's warning to Dante lest he look at Gorgon, Medusa's head, a heavenly messenger, the flight of the demons, entry into D, where Virgil and Dante reached the sixth circle and its arch-heretics, entombed in red-hot sepulchres. The color cowardice displayed in me when I saw that my guide was driven back made him more quickly mask his own new pallor. He stood alert, like an attentive listener, because his eye could hardly journey far across the black air and the heavy fog. "We have to win this battle," he began. "If not, but one so great had offered aid. That help seems slow in coming. I must wait." But I saw well enough how he had covered his first words with the words that followed after, so different from what he had said before. Nevertheless, his speech made me afraid, because I drew out from his broken phrase a meaning worse, perhaps, than he'd intended. Does anyone from the first circle, one whose only punishment is crippled hope, ever descend so deep in this sad hollow? That was my question, and he answered so. "It is quite rare for us to go along the way that I have taken now. But I, in truth, have been here once before. That savage witch, Erichlo, she who called the shades back to their bodies, summoned me. My flesh had not been long stripped off when she had me descend through all the rings of hell to draw a spirit back from Judas's circle. That is the deepest and the darkest place, the farthest from heaven that girds all. So rest assured, I know the pathway well. This swamp that breeds and breathes the giant stench surrounds the city of the sorrowing, which now we cannot enter without anger." And he said more, but I cannot remember because my eyes had wholly taken me to that high tower with the glowing summit where, at one single point, there suddenly stood three infernal furies flecked with blood, who had the limbs of women, and their ways but wore, as girdles, snakes of deepest green. Small serpent and horned vipers formed their hairs, and these were used to bind their bestial temples. And he who knew these handmaids well, they served the queen of never-ending lamentation, said, "Look at the ferocious Erinyes. That is Megara on the left, and she who weeps upon the right, that is Alecto, Tisiphone between them." It was done. Each fury tore her breast with taloned nails, each with her palms beat on herself and wailed so loud that I, in fear, drew near the poet. "Just let Medusa come, then we shall turn him into stone," they all cried, looking down. "We should have punished Theseus's assault. Turn round and keep your eyes shut fast, for should the Gorgon show herself and you behold her, never again would you return above." My master said, and he himself turned me around, and, not content with just my hands, used his as well to cover up my eyes. "O you possessed of sturdy intellects, observe the teaching that is hidden here, beneath the veil of verses so obscure." And now across the turbid waves there passed a reboantic fracas, horrid sound enough to make both of the shorelines quake, and sound not other than a wind's when, wild because it must contend with warmer currents, it strikes against the forest without let, shattering, beating down, bearing off branches, as it moves proudly, clouds of dust before it, and puts to flight both animals and shepherds. He freed my eyes and said, "Now let your optic nerve turn directly toward that ancient foam, there where the mist is thickest and most acrid. As frogs confronted by their enemy, the snake will scatter under water, till each hunches its heap along the bottom. So did the thousand ruined souls I saw take flight before a figure crossing Styx, who walked as if on land and with dry soles. He thrust away the thick air from his face, waving his left hand frequently before him. That seemed the only task that wearied him. I knew well he was heaven's messenger, and I turned toward my master, and he made a sign I be still and bow before him. How full of high disdain he seemed to me. He came up to the gate, and with a wind he opened it, for there was no resistance. "O you cast out of heaven, hated crowd," were his first words upon that horrid threshold. "Why do you harbor this presumptuousness? Why are you so reluctant to endure that will whose aim can never be cut short, and which so often added to your hurts? What good is it to thrust against the fates? Your Cerberus, if you remember well, for that had both his throat and chin stripped clean. At that he turned and took the filthy road, and did not speak to us, but had the look of one who is obsessed by other cares, than those that press and gnaw at those before him. And we moved forward, on into the city, in safety, having heard his holy words. We made our way inside without a struggle, and I, who wanted so much to observe the state of things, that such a fortress guarded, as soon as I had entered, looked about, I saw on every side a spreading plain of lamentation and atrocious pain, just as at Arles, where Rhone becomes a marsh, just as at Pola, near Cornero's Gulf, that closes Italy and bathes its borders. The sepulchre made all the plain uneven, so they did here on every side, except that here the sepulchres were much more harsh. The flames were scattered all through the tombs, and these had kindled all of them to glowing heat. No artisan could ask for hotter iron. The lid of every tomb was lifted up, and from each tomb such sorry cries arose, as could come only from the sad and hurt. And I, Master, who can these people be, who, buried in the great chests of stone like these, must speak by way of sighs and agony, that he to me, here are arch-heretics, and those who followed them, from every sect. Those tombs are much more crowded than you think. Here, light has been insepulchred with light. Some monuments are heated more, some less. And then he turned around, and to his right, we passed between the torments and high walls. Canto 10. Still the sixth circle, the heretics, the tombs of the Epicureans, Varanata della Uberti, Cavalcanti de Cavalcanti. Varanata's prediction of Dante's difficulty in returning to Florence from exile. The inability of the damned to see the present, although they can foresee the future. Now, by a narrow path that ran between those torments and the ramparts of the city, my master moves ahead, I following. O highest virtue, you who led me through these circles of transgression, at your will do speak to me and satisfy my longings. Can those who lie within the sepulchres be seen? The lids, in fact, have all been lifted. No guardian is watching over them. And he, to me, they'll all be shuttered up when they return here from Jehoshaphat, together with the flesh they left above. Within this region is the cemetery of Epicurus and his followers, all those who say the souls die with the body. And so the question you have asked of me will soon find satisfaction while we're here, as will the longing you have hid from me. And I, good guide, the only reason I have hid my heart was that I might speak briefly, and you, long since, encouraged me in this. O Tuscan, you who pass alive across the fiery city with such seemly words, be kind enough to stay your journey here. Your accent makes it clear that you belong among the natives of the noble city I may have dealt with too vindictively. This sound had burst so unexpectedly out of one sepulchre that, trembling, I then drew a little closer to my guide. But he told me, "Turn around. What are you doing? That's Varanata who has risen there. You will see all of him from the waist up." My eyes already were intent on his, and up he rose, his forehead and his chest, as if he had tremendous scorn for hell. My guide, his hands encouraging and quick, thrust me between the sepulchres toward him, saying, "Your words must be appropriate." When I had drawn closer to his sepulchre, he glanced at me, and as if in disdain he asked of me, "Who were your ancestors?" Because I wanted so to be compliant, I hid no thing from him. I told him all. At this he lifted up his brows a bit and said, "They were ferocious enemies of mine and of my see if I had come with someone else, but then his expectations spent. He said in tears, "If it is your high intellect that lets you journey here, through this blind prison, where is my son? Why is he not with you?" I answered, "My own powers have not brought me. He who awaits me there leads me through here. Perhaps to one of your Guido did disdain." His words, the nature of his punishment, these had already let me read his name. Therefore my answer was so fully made. Then suddenly erect he cried, "What's that? He did disdain? He is not still alive? The sweet light does not strike against his eyes?" And when he noticed how I hesitated a moment in my answer, he fell back supine, and did not show himself again. And that great-hearted one, the other shade at whose request I'd stayed, did not change aspect, or turn aside his head, or lean, or bend. And taking up his words where he'd left off, "If they were slow," he said, "to learn that art, that is more torment to me than this bed. And yet the lady who is ruler here will not have her face kindled 50 times before you learn how heavy is that art. And so may you return to the sweet world. Tell me, why are those citizens so cruel against my kin in all of their decrees?" To which I said, "The carnage, the great bloodshed that stained the waters of the Arbia red, have led us to such prayers in our temple." He sighed and shook his head and then said, "In that I did not act alone, but certainly I'd have joined the others without cause. But where I was alone was there, where all the rest would have annihilated Florence, had I not interceded forcefully. Ah, as I hope your seed may yet find peace," I asked, "so may you help me to undo the knot that here has snarled my course of thought. It seems, if I hear right, that you can see before him that which time is carrying, but you're denied the sight of present things. We see, even as men who are far-sighted those things," he said, "that are remote from us. The highest Lord allots us that much light, but when events draw near or our minds are useless. Were we not informed by others, we should know nothing of your human state, so you can understand how our awareness will die completely at the moment when the portal of the future has been shut." Then, as if penitent for my omission, I said, "Will you now tell that fallen man his son is still among the living ones? And if a while ago I held my tongue before his question, let him know it was because I had in mind the doubt you've answered." And now my master was recalling me, so that, more hurriedly, I asked the spirit to name the others who were there with him. He said, "More than 1,000 lie with me. The second Frederick is but one among them, as is the cardinal. I name no others." With that he hid himself, and pondering the speech that seemed to me so menacing, I turned my steps to meet the ancient poet. He moved ahead, and as we made our way, he said to me, "Why are you so dismayed?" I satisfied him, answering him fully, and then that sage exhorted me, "Remember the words that have been spoken here against you. Now pay attention." And he raised his finger, "Where you shall stand before the gentle splendor of one whose gracious eyes see everything, then you shall learn from her your lifetime's journey." Following that, his steps turned to the left, leaving the wall, moving toward the middle along a path that strikes into a valley, whose stench, as it rose up, disgusted us. Canto 11. Still in the 6th circle, Pope Anastasius' tomb. Virgil on parts of D they now will visit, where the modes of malice are punished. Violence in the 7th circle's 3 rings, ordinary fraud in the 8th circle, and treacherous fraud in the 9th circle. Hell's previous circles, 2 through 5, as circles of incontinence. Usury condemned. Along the upper rim of a high bank, formed by a ring of massive broken boulders, we came above a crowd more cruelly pent, and here, because of the outrageous stench thrown up in excess by that deep abyss, we drew back till we were behind the lid of the great tomb. On Those circles are all full of cursed spirits, so that your seeing of them may suffice. Learn now the how and the why of their confinement. Of every malice that earns hate in heaven, injustice is the end, and each such end by force or fraud brings harm to other men. However, fraud is man's peculiar vice. God finds it more displeasing, and therefore the fraudulent are lower, suffering more. The violent take all of the first circle, but since one uses force against three persons, that circle's built of three divided rings. To God and to oneself and to one's neighbor, I mean to them or what is theirs, one can do violence, as you shall now hear clearly. Violent death and painful wounds may be inflicted on one's neighbor. His possessions may suffer ruin, fire, and extortion. Thus, murderers and those who strike in malice, as well as plunderers and robbers, these in separated ranks, the first ring rounds. A man can set violent hands against himself for his belongings, so within the second ring represents, though uselessly, whoever would deny himself your world, gambling away, wasting his patrimony, and weeping where he should instead be happy. One can be violent against the Godhead, one's heart denying and blaspheming him, and scorning nature and the good in her. So with its sign, the smallest ring has sealed both Sodom and Cahors and all of those who speak in passionate contempt of God. Now fraud, that eats away at every conscience, is practiced by a man against another who trusts in him, or one who has no trust. This latter way seems only to cut off the bond of love that nature forges. Thus nestled within the second circle are hypocrisy and flattery, sorcerers and falsifiers, simony and theft, narrators and panderers, and like trash. But in the former way of fraud, not only the love that nature forges is forgotten, but added love that builds a special trust. Where there is the universe's seat of deed, all traitors are consumed eternally. Master, your reasoning is clear indeed. I said, it has made plain for me the nature of this pit and the population in it. But tell me, those the dense marsh holds, or those driven before the wind, or those on whom rain falls, or those who clash with such harsh tongues, why are they not all punished in the city of flaming red, if God is angry with them? And if he's not, why then are they tormented? And then to me, why does your reason wander so far from its accustomed course? He said. Of or what other things are you now thinking? Or of what other things are you now thinking? Have you forgotten, then, the words with which your ethics treats of those three dispositions that strike at heaven's will, incontinence and malice and mad bestiality, and how the fault that is the least condemned and least offends God is incontinence? If you consider carefully this judgment, and call to mind the souls of upper hell, who bear the penalties outside this city, you'll see why they have been set off by these unrighteous ones, and why when heaven's vengeance hammers at them, it carries lesser anger. O sun that heals all sight that is perplexed when I ask you, your answer so intense that doubting pleases me as much as knowing. Go back a little to that point, I said, for you told me that usury offends divine goodness. Unravel now that knot. Philosophy, for one who understands, points out, and not in just one place, he said, how nature follows, though she takes her course, the divine intellect and divine art. And if you read your physics carefully, not many pages from the start, you'll see that when it can, your art would follow nature, just as a pupil imitates his master, so that your art is almost God's grandchild. From these two, art and nature, it is fitting, if you recall how Genesis begins, for men to make their way, to gain their living, and since the usurer prefers another pathway, he scorns both nature in herself and art. The follower, his hope is elsewhere. But follow me, for it is time to move. The fishes glitter now on the horizon, all the wane is spread out over Paris. Only beyond can one climb down the cliff. Canto 12, the seventh circle, first ring, the violent against their neighbors, the Minotaur, pace that we had reached for our descent along the bank was alpine. What reclined upon the bank would, too, repel all eyes, just like the toppled mass of rock that struck because of earthquake or eroded crops. The adage on its flank, this side of Trent, where from the mountaintop from which it thrusts down to the plain, the rock is shattered so that it permits a path for those above. Such was the passage down to that ravine, and at the edge above the cracked abyss there lay outstretched the infamy of Crete, conceived within the counterfeited cow, and, catching sight of us, he bit himself like one whom fury devastates within. Turning to him, my sage cried out, "Perhaps you think this is the Duke of Athens here, who in the world above brought you your depth. Be off, you beast. This man who comes has not been tortured by your sister. All he wants in coming here is to observe your torments, just as the bull that breaks loose from its halter, the moment it receives that fatal stroke. It cannot run, but plunges back and forth. So did I see the Minotaur respond, and my alert guide cried, 'Run toward the pass. It's better to descend while he's berserk.' And so we made our way across that heap of stones, which often moved beneath my feet because my weight was somewhat strange from them. While climbing down, I thought, he said, 'You wonder perhaps about the fallen mass, watched over by the inhuman rage I have just quenched. Now I would have you know, the other time that I descended into lower hell, this mass of boulders had not yet collapsed. But if I reason rightly, it was just before the coming of the one who took from D the highest circle's splendid spoils, that on all sides the steep, filthy valley had trembled so. I thought the universe felt love, by which, as some believe, the world has often been converted into chaos. At that moment, here as well as elsewhere, these ancient boulders toppled in this way. But fix your eyes below upon the valley, for now we near the stream of blood, where those who injure others violently boil. What blind cupidity and insane anger which goad us on so much in our short life, then steep us in such grief eternally. I saw a broad ditch bent into an arc, so that it could embrace all of that pain, precisely as my guide had said before. Between it and the base of the embankment raced files of centaurs, who were armed with arrows, as, in the world above, they used to hunt. On seeing us descend, they all reined in, and after they had chosen bows and shafts, 3 of their number moved out from their ranks, and still far off one cried, "What punishment do you approach as you descend the slope? But speak from there, if not, I draw my bow." My master told him, "We shall make reply only to Chiron when we reach his side. Your hasty will never serve you well." Then he nudged me and said, "That one is Nessus, who died because of lovely Deianira, and of himself wrought vengeance for himself. And in the middle, gazing at his chest, is mighty Chiron, tutor of Achilles, the third of Pholus, he who was so frenzied. And many thousands wheel around the moat, their arrows aimed at any souls that thrusts above the blood more than its guilt allots." By now we had drawn near those agile beasts. Chiron drew out an arrow, with the notch he parted his beard back upon its jaws. When he had uncovered this enormous mouth, he said to his companions, "Have you noticed how he who walks behind moves what he touches? Dead souls are not accustomed to do that." And my good guide, now near the centaur's chest, the place where his two natures met, replied, "He is indeed alive, and so alone it falls to me to show him the dark valley. Necessity has brought him here, not pleasure, for he who gave me this new task was one who had just come from singing Hallelujah. He is no robber, I am not a thief, and by the power that permits my steps the journey on so wild a path, give us one of your band to serve as our companion, and let him show us where to ford the ditch, and let him bear this man upon his back, for he's no spirit who can fly through air." Then Chiron wheeled about, and right and said to Nessus, "Then return and be their guide. If other troops disturb you, fend them off." Now with our faithful escort we advanced along the blood-red boiling ditch's banks, beside the piercing cries of those who boil. I saw some who were sunk up to their brows, and that huge centaur said, "These are the tyrants who plunged their hands in blood and plundering. Here they lament their ruthless crimes. Here are both Alexander and the fierce Dionysus, who brought such years of grief to Sicily. That brow with hair so black is Azelino. That other there, the blonde one, is Obezo of Leslie. above the boiling blood as far up as their throats. He pointed out one shade alone apart and said, "Within God's bosom he impaled the heart that still drips blood upon the Thames." Then I caught sight of some who kept their heads and even their full chests above the tide, among them many whom I recognized. And so the blood grew always shallower until it only scorched the feet, and here we found a place where we could ford the ditch. "Just as you see that on this side the brook continually thins," the centaur said, "so I should have you know the rivulet along the other side will slowly deepen its bed until it reaches once again the depth where tyranny must make lament. And there divine justice torments Attila, he who was such a scourge upon the earth, and Pyrrhus, Sextus, to eternity.